Picture this. You've just cracked open your shell, blinking in the harsh sunlight of an ancient world that wants nothing more than to eat you alive. Welcome to life as a baby Stegosaurus, where your first breath might very well be your last. This isn't some fairy tale where Mommy Dinosaur teaches you the ropes. No, this is raw survival at its most brutal. And you're about as defensible as a walking snack bar with legs. The moment you emerge from your egg, reality hits harder than a meteor. You're alone, completely, utterly alone. Your mother? She's been gone for months, having laid her eggs and walked away without a backward glance. That's just how Stegosaurus parenting works, or rather, doesn't work. There's no cozy nest with protective parents standing guard. There's no one to show you which plants won't poison you, or which shadows hide death itself. You're roughly the size of a house cat, which sounds adorable until you realize that in the Jurassic period, being small means being prey. Everything wants to eat you. And I mean everything. The forest around you pulses with the calls of hunters both massive and tiny, each one capable of ending your story before it even begins. But here's what makes the Stegosaurus struggle so uniquely terrifying. You're not built for this early game of survival. You're not a swift raptor that can dart between trees. You're not a clever little mammal that can squeeze into tight hiding spots. You're a future tank that's currently made of tissue paper and wishful thinking. Your only defenses at this stage are pathetic. Those iconic plates that will one day make you famous? Right now, they're nothing more than tiny bumps along your spine, about as intimidating as pimples. Your famous spiked tail? It's there, sure, but it's like bringing a butter knife to a sword fight. The spikes are so small and soft that they couldn't puncture wet paper, let alone the hide of a hungry predator. What you do have are siblings. Other tiny stegosaurs who hatched around the same time, all of you equally clueless and equally doomed. But here's the thing about being born into a world that considers you lunch. You learn fast, or you become fast food. Your instincts kick in immediately, driving you and your brothers and sisters to huddle together in whatever cover you can find. The vegetation around your hatching site becomes your entire universe. Massive ferns tower over you like skyscrapers, creating a jungle canopy that's both your salvation and your prison. These plants hide you from the eyes of aerial predators, but they also block your view of danger approaching from every direction. Every rustle could be the wind, or it could be death stalking through the underbrush. Your coloring helps, barely. That greenish tint to your hide lets you blend with the foliage, but camouflage only works if you stay perfectly still. And staying still is a luxury you can't afford when you need to eat constantly to fuel your rapid growth. This creates the central paradox of early Stegosaurus life. You must expose yourself to survive, but exposure means almost certain death. Food becomes an obsession from day one. Your beak-like mouth is designed for cropping vegetation, but as a hatchling, you can only manage the softest shoots and most tender fern fronds. Everything else is too tough for your weak jaw muscles. This means you're constantly searching, constantly moving, constantly vulnerable. And the predators know this. They've learned that young herbivores must eat, must drink, must expose themselves. The forest is filled with hunters that specialize in picking off creatures exactly like you. Allosaurus adults patrol the larger clearings, but it's not just the giants you need to fear. Smaller predators are actually more dangerous at your size. A juvenile carnivore looking to prove itself sees you as the perfect target. Big enough to be worth the effort, small enough to be manageable. Water presents another nightmare scenario. You need it to survive, but every water source is a killing field. Predators know that all life must drink, so they position themselves near streams and ponds like patient executioners. Approaching water requires a level of strategic thinking that your tiny brain can barely handle. You and your siblings develop a system. Some watch, while others drink, rotating duties in a desperate attempt to keep everyone alive. The nights are perhaps the worst part. As darkness falls, the forest transforms into something even more terrifying. Nocturnal hunters emerge, creatures perfectly adapted to hunting in the dark while you're essentially blind. You huddle with your siblings for warmth and comfort, but mostly for the illusion of safety. Every sound makes your heart race. Every snap of a twig could herald your doom. Sleep becomes a luxury you can't afford, yet exhaustion makes you clumsy and slow. This creates another impossible balance. Rest enough to function, but stay alert enough to survive. Many of your siblings don't manage this balance. You wake up some mornings to find empty spaces where brothers and sisters used to sleep, their absence telling a story you don't want to acknowledge. The forest itself seems designed to kill you. Dense undergrowth tangles your legs and slows your escape. Fallen logs create obstacles that tire your small muscles. Thorny vines tear at your soft hide, leaving wounds that attract scavengers and signal weakness to predators. Even the plants you need for food often grow in exposed areas where you become visible to hunting eyes above and around you. Your learning curve is steep and unforgiving. Each day brings new lessons written in blood and terror. You learn which sounds mean immediate danger and which ones indicate distant threats. You develop an understanding of wind patterns and how they carry scent, both yours to predators and theirs to you. You begin to read the behavior of other animals, using them as an early warning system for approaching danger. But perhaps the cruelest aspect of your early life is how your own body betrays you. You're growing rapidly, but unevenly. Your legs grow faster than your coordination improves. Your appetite increases before your jaw strength catches up. Your plates begin to develop, but they're still soft and provide no real protection while making you slightly more visible to predators. The psychological toll is immense. Constant fear becomes your default state. Every moment of peace is temporary, every meal interrupted by the need to scan for threats. You develop a hypervigilance that will stay with you for life, assuming you live long enough to develop anything at all. Your nervous system is constantly flooded with stress hormones, preparing you for flight or fight scenarios that happen multiple times every day. Your siblings become both your greatest comfort and your greatest source of anxiety. Their presence means safety in numbers and shared vigilance, but it also means competition for food and increased visibility to predators. When one of them makes a mistake that attracts attention, you all pay the price. When one disappears in the night, the group becomes smaller and more vulnerable. The seasonal changes add another layer of complexity to your struggle. During dry periods, food becomes scarce, forcing you to venture further from safety. Water sources shrink, concentrating both prey and predators into smaller areas. During wet seasons, the dense vegetation provides better cover, but also conceals more dangers. Weather itself becomes an enemy. Storms that disorient you, heat that exhausts you, cold that slows your already limited reflexes. What makes this struggle even more profound is the knowledge that this is just the beginning. These early weeks and months are merely the tutorial level of a game where the difficulty only increases. You're not just trying to survive until tomorrow. You're trying to survive long enough to become something that can actually defend itself. But that transformation is still months away, and every day between now and then is another roll of the dice with death. The forest watches your struggle with indifference. It doesn't care about your determination or your will to live. It operates on simple rules. The strong survive. The weak become nutrition for the strong, and everything is food for something else. You're currently at the bottom of that food chain, a position that offers no comfort and no guarantees. Yet somehow, against all odds, some of you will make it through this gauntlet. Some will grow large enough and strong enough to flip the script on this dangerous world, but that future feels impossibly distant when you're hiding under a fern, listening to the approaching footsteps of something that wants to tear you apart. This is your reality as a newborn Stegosaurus, a daily battle against impossible odds, where survival depends on a combination of luck, instinct, and the desperate hope that tomorrow might be the day you finally grow big enough to stop running. The weeks crawl by like geological epochs, each sunrise bringing fresh horrors and microscopic victories. Your body begins its slow transformation from helpless hatchling to something resembling a proper dinosaur. But the journey is anything but smooth. Those tiny plates along your spine start developing into something more substantial, yet they remain frustratingly inadequate. They're like wearing cardboard armor to a knife fight. Your tail develops its first real spikes, but calling them weapons would be generous. They're more like slightly pointy decorations that might give a predator pause for exactly half a second. Still, it's progress. And in your world, progress means the difference between becoming dinner and living to see another terrifying dawn. The psychological warfare never stops. Every successful day of survival brings a false sense of security that the forest immediately punishes. You start feeling confident about your hiding spots. Then a Compsognathus pack discovers your location, and you're scrambling for your life again. You think you've mastered the art of silent movement. Then you step on a branch that announces your presence to every predator within a mile radius. Your relationship with food evolves from desperate scavenging to strategic foraging. You develop preferences, learning that certain ferns taste better and provide more nutrition. But preference is a luxury that can kill you. The tastiest plants often grow in the most exposed locations, as if the forest is testing your commitment to survival versus your desire for a decent meal. Water remains the ultimate gamble. You've watched siblings disappear while drinking from seemingly safe streams. The memory of their final moments burns in your mind, teaching you that paranoia isn't a character flaw, but a survival skill. You develop elaborate rituals around drinking, checking wind direction, studying the behavior of other animals, timing your approach for maximum escape potential. The social dynamics among your surviving siblings become increasingly complex. What started as simple huddling for warmth evolves into a primitive society with unspoken rules and hierarchies. The strongest eat first, the fastest scout ahead, the most observant keep watch. It's not cruelty, it's mathematics. The group's survival depends on maximizing everyone's strengths while minimizing collective weaknesses. But tension simmers beneath this cooperation. Food scarcity creates competition that tests sibling bonds. When resources are limited, helping another might mean your own starvation. These moral dilemmas would challenge adult minds, yet you're forced to navigate them with a brain the size of a walnut and the emotional complexity of a reptile, running on pure survival instinct. Your sensory abilities sharpened through constant use and mortal necessity. Your hearing becomes so acute that you can distinguish between the footstep of a hunting ornitholestes and the movement of a harmless scavenger. Your sense of smell develops beyond simple recognition to complex analysis. You learn to read the chemical stories carried on every breeze, which predators passed through recently, how fresh their scent trails are, whether they're hunting or just traveling. The forest's seasonal rhythms become your calendar of terror. You learn that certain times of year bring different dangers. Mating seasons make some predators more aggressive and territorial. Nesting periods create desperate parents willing to attack anything that might threaten their young. Weather patterns shift the behavior of every creature, creating cascading effects that alter the entire ecosystem's danger level. Your growing size brings new challenges alongside new capabilities. You're no longer small enough to hide in the tiniest crevices, but you're still too small to intimidate anything that matters. This awkward middle phase is perhaps the most dangerous time of all. You've lost some escape options without gaining meaningful defensive abilities. It's like being a teenager in the most lethal high school imaginable. The predators adapt to your growth, changing their hunting strategies as you change your defensive tactics. What worked against juvenile hunters fails spectacularly against their adult counterparts. The learning curve never flattens, it just shifts to new subjects with higher stakes. Survival becomes an advanced degree program where failing any test means immediate death. Your plates continue their maddeningly slow development, growing more prominent but remaining largely decorative. They help with temperature regulation, making the brutal heat and surprising cold slightly more bearable. But they won't stop teeth or claws. They do make you look marginally more intimidating to some smaller predators, but anything truly dangerous sees right through the bluff. Sleep becomes increasingly elusive as your awareness expands. The more you understand about the danger surrounding you, the harder it becomes to achieve the rest your growing body desperately needs. You develop the ability to sleep with one part of your brain while keeping another part alert, a skill that will serve you well if you live long enough to master it completely. Territory disputes with other herbivores add another layer of complexity to your existence. Larger plant eaters don't necessarily see you as prey, but they definitely see you as competition for limited food resources. Getting trampled by a massive sauropod isn't technically predation, but you'll be just as dead. Learning to read the intentions and moods of various herbivores becomes another crucial survival skill. Your tail spikes finally develop enough to inflict real damage, but using them effectively requires practice you can't afford to get wrong. Your first successful defense against a small predator fills you with a pride that nearly gets you killed when you become overconfident. The forest has no patience for ego, and hubris is just another way to die. The constant stress begins affecting your development in subtle ways. Your growth rate, while still impressive, shows signs of the toll that perpetual fear takes on a young body. Stress hormones interfere with optimal nutrition absorption. Interrupted sleep cycles affect muscle development. The psychological pressure manifests in physical limitations that compound your vulnerabilities. Weather becomes both ally and enemy in increasingly sophisticated ways. Rain provides cover for your movements, but also masks the approach of predators. Wind carries scents that warn you of danger, but also carries your scent to hunters downwind. Seasonal changes that bring new food sources also bring new predators that follow those resources. Your understanding of the forest's social network expands beyond simple predator-prey relationships. You learn to read the complex web of interactions between different species, using the behavior of seemingly unrelated animals as early warning systems. When the small mammals go quiet, something big and dangerous is moving through. When the pterosaurs circle overhead, they've spotted something interesting below. The psychological evolution is perhaps more dramatic than the physical changes. Fear transforms from a paralyzing emotion to a useful tool. Hypervigilance becomes a refined skill rather than an exhausting burden. The constant calculations of risk versus reward become automatic, freeing up mental resources for higher-level strategic thinking. Your siblings, who survive this gauntlet alongside you, develop into a cohesive unit with specialized roles and seamless communication. You learn to move as one organism, sharing information through subtle signals and positioning. This cooperation multiplies your individual survival chances exponentially, but it also creates new vulnerabilities when predators learn to exploit group behaviors. The forest itself becomes a known quantity rather than an endless mystery. You map its dangers and opportunities with increasing precision, learning which paths offer the best escape routes and which areas provide the most reliable food sources. This growing familiarity breeds of which can prove both confidence and complacency, either fatal if taken too far. Your body continues its transformation towards something that might eventually command respect rather than merely inspire hunger. But that future remains frustratingly distant, and every day between now and then offers 1,000 new ways to fail. The struggle continues, relentless and unforgiving, shaping both your body and your mind into something harder, smarter, and more resilient than anything that emerged from that first fragile egg. Your growth spurts arrive in frustrating waves, each one bringing tantalizing hints of the powerhouse you might become while leaving you maddeningly vulnerable in the present. Those plates along your spine develop their distinctive diamond shape, but they're still soft cartilage that offers about as much protection as wet leather. The bright coloration that's beginning to emerge makes you more visible to everything with eyes, turning what should be defensive armor into a giant neon sign that screams, "Fresh meat here." The irony isn't lost on your primitive brain. Every adaptation that will eventually save your life currently makes survival harder. Your growing size means you can no longer squeeze into the smallest hiding spots that once offered sanctuary. Your developing tail spikes make movement through dense vegetation noisy and cumbersome. Your increasing appetite forces longer foraging expeditions into dangerous territory. Evolution is playing the cruelest possible joke, giving you the tools for survival just slowly enough to maximize your suffering. Social hierarchies within your sibling group become increasingly complex and sometimes brutal. The strongest individuals start feeding times, asserting dominance during weaker siblings away from the choicest vegetation. It's not malicious, it's mathematical survival. Resources are limited, and the group's best chance depends on keeping the most viable members alive and strong. But being relegated to secondary status when you're already struggling creates a downward spiral that's hard to escape. Your sensory development reaches almost supernatural levels of acuity. You can detect the emotional state of pre-subtle chemical data through signals in their scent. Fear from hunger smells different, which smells different from territorial aggression. This knowledge helps you assess threats more accurately, but it also means you're constantly bombarded with information about every creature's intentions within a half-mile radius. The mental processing power required is exhausting, like trying to simultaneously translate multiple foreign languages while solving complex math problems. Weather patterns become your obsession because they determine everything else about your daily survival chances. High-pressure systems mean clearer sight lines but also make your scent carry further. Storm fronts bring cover, but also disorient your carefully calibrated senses. Temperature fluctuations affect both your metabolism and the behavior of every other creature in the forest. You develop an intuitive understanding of atmospheric pressure that rivals modern meteorologists, all because your life depends on predicting how weather will influence the mood of everything trying to eat you. The forest's soundscape becomes a complex symphony that you learn to read like sheet music. Each bird call indicates specific information about threats and opportunities. The absence of certain sounds is often more important than their presence. When the small mammals stop chattering, when the insects go quiet, when even the wind seems to hold its breath, you know something apex is moving through your territory. These moments of unnatural silence trigger immediate flight responses that have saved your life more times than you can count. Territory mapping becomes an obsession born of necessity. You memorize every fallen log, every dense thicket, every water source within your range. But the forest is dynamic, constantly changing as storms knock down trees, seasonal flooding alter stream courses, and other animals modify the landscape through their own survival activities. Your mental map requires constant updates, and outdated information can be lethal when you're running for your life and discover your planned escape route no longer exists. Predator behavior analysis reaches doctoral-level sophistication as you learn to read the hunting patterns of different species. Allosaurs hunt differently during mating season versus feeding season. Young predators take different risks than experienced ones. Pack hunters coordinate differently than solitary stalkers. Weather affects predator mood and success rates in predictable ways. This knowledge accumulates into a database of death that helps you avoid most encounters. But the sheer volume of information required to stay alive is mentally overwhelming. Your relationship with pain evolves from something to be avoided at all costs to a useful source of information. Minor injuries teach you about your body's limitations and healing capabilities. Scars become reference points for measuring growth and remembering close calls. The chronic aches from constant stress and rapid development become background noise that you learn to ignore while staying alert for new sources of discomfort that might indicate fresh dangers. Sleep patterns fragment into brief microsessions scattered throughout day and night cycles. Extended rest becomes impossible when predators operate on different schedules. You master the art of power napping while maintaining enough awareness to detect approaching threats. Dreams become rare luxuries, and when they do occur, they're usually nightmares about the various ways you've nearly died. Rest stops being restorative and becomes merely a biological necessity you squeeze in between survival tasks. Food preferences develop beyond simple nutrition to include strategic considerations. Plants that grow near escape routes become more valuable than tastier options in exposed areas. Vegetation that requires less chewing time reduces vulnerability during feeding. Species that provide quick energy bursts for emergency escapes take priority over those offering sustained nutrition. Your diet becomes a complex calculation of calories, convenience, and catastrophe potential. The psychological toll of constant hypervigilance begins manifesting in subtle behavioral changes. You develop nervous tics and repetitive behaviors that help process stress. Social interactions with siblings become stilted and formal, focused entirely on survival coordination rather than any form of play or affection. The concept of relaxation becomes foreign, almost incomprehensible. Every moment of decreased alertness feels like a betrayal of your own survival instincts. Your growing tail weapon finally reaches a size where it might actually deter something more dangerous than an insect, but learning to use it effectively nearly gets you killed multiple times. The first few attempts at defensive tail swinging are clumsy and off balance, leaving you vulnerable to counterattack. Proper technique requires practice, but practice means exposing yourself to danger repeatedly. It's like learning to fight by jumping into boxing rings with professional killers. Seasonal migration patterns of both prey and predators create shifting dynamics that require constant adaptation. What's safe territory in spring becomes a hunting ground in summer when different species move through the area. Water sources that provide sanctuary during dry seasons become death traps during migrations when they attract every creature within traveling distance. Your survival strategies require seasonal adjustments that would challenge BI experienced wildlifeologists. Temperature regulation through your developing plates becomes both a survival tool and a vulnerability. The thermal properties help you maintain optimal body temperature during extreme weather, but they also create heat signatures that predators can detect. Learning to control blood flow to your plates for camouflage purposes requires conscious effort that diverts attention from other threats. It's like trying to manually regulate your heartbeat while playing dodgeball with professional assassins. Competition with other herbivore species intensifies as your size increases. You're no longer beneath the notice of established plant eaters who see you as a potential threat to their food sources. Adult herbivores don't want to kill you necessarily, but they'll absolutely drive you away from prime feeding areas, forcing you into marginal territories where predators know the desperate and weak congregate. Being bullied by your own ecological allies adds insult to the injury of trying not to be eaten. Your communication skills with surviving siblings develop into a sophisticated system of subtle signals and body language. Tail positions indicate different types and levels of threats. Plate coloration changes convey emotional states and intentions. Head movements coordinate group activities and warning systems. This nonverbal communication happens at frequencies and through methods that predators haven't learned to interpret, giving your group a crucial advantage in coordination and response times. The development of your beak continues to cause problems, as its changing shape affects your ability to process different types of vegetation. Plants that were easy to eat last month become difficult as your jaw structure shifts. New food sources become accessible, while old favorites move out of reach. This constant adaptation of feeding technique requires mental flexibility that's exhausting when you're already operating at maximum cognitive capacity just to stay alive. Your understanding of ecosystem relationships reaches complexity levels that would impress professional ecologists. You learn how the health of one species affects the behavior of dozens of others. Plant diseases that weaken certain vegetation attract different insects, which attract different birds, which affects the hunting patterns of aerial predators. Every environmental change creates ripple effects that alter threat levels across your entire survival landscape. The psychological pressure of being responsible for group survival while barely managing your own creates internal conflicts that manifest in decision-making paralysis during critical moments. Choosing between personal safety and group welfare becomes a constant moral calculation that your reptilian brain isn't equipped to handle gracefully. The weight of these decisions ages you in ways that have nothing to do with physical development. Your plates finally develop enough rigidity to provide some protection against smaller predators, but they also create new vulnerabilities. The gaps between plates become targets for precise attackers. The increased surface area makes temperature regulation more complex. The distinctive silhouette makes long-distance identification by predators much easier. Every defensive improvement comes with trade-offs that require new adaptive strategies. Water dependency creates increasingly complex logistical challenges as your size and group dynamics change. Larger bodies need more water, but larger groups are more visible at drinking sites. Seasonal changes in water availability force longer journeys to reliable sources. Territorial disputes with other species over water access become more frequent and dangerous. The simple act of staying hydrated becomes a military operation, requiring reconnaissance, timing, and backup plans. Your growing confidence occasionally leads to overreach that nearly proves fatal. Successfully defending against one small predator doesn't make you capable of handling larger threats, but your primitive brain doesn't always make that distinction clearly. These near-death experiences from overconfidence teach harsh lessons about accurately assessing your actual capabilities versus your wishful thinking about your capabilities. The forest continues its relentless education program, each day bringing new curricula in the advanced mathematics of survival. Every lesson learned the hard way, every mistake nearly fatal, every small victory immediately overshadowed by the next challenge. You're becoming something formidable, but the transformation process itself might kill you before you reach the safety of true size and strength. Your struggle continues, each day a masterclass in applied survival theory, where graduation means living to see another sunrise, and failure means becoming a cautionary tale scattered across the forest floor. The mathematics of survival become increasingly brutal as your body reaches what scientists call the awkward adolescent phase of Stegosaurus development. You're now roughly the size of a small car, which sounds impressive until you realize that in the Jurassic food chain, you've merely graduated from bite-sized snack to satisfying meal. Your plates have developed into something that looks almost respectable, rising along your spine in a double row that catches sunlight and makes you visible from considerable distances. It's like wearing a disco ball in a world where being seen means being hunted. The cruel irony intensifies daily. Those magnificent plates that will eventually become your trademark are currently your greatest liability. They're still too soft to deflect serious attacks, but they're rigid enough to prevent the lightning-fast escapes that once saved your life. You can no longer squeeze through tight spaces or flatten yourself against the ground with any effectiveness. Your silhouette has become unmistakably Stegosaurus-shaped, which means every predator in the forest knows exactly what you are, and more importantly, how to kill you. Your tail spikes have finally developed into something resembling actual weapons. But using them effectively requires a level of coordination your nervous system hasn't quite mastered. The physics of swinging several tons of body weight while maintaining balance and accuracy is extraordinarily complex. Your early attempts at combat are clumsy affairs that leave you more exhausted than victorious. It's like trying to fence with a telephone pole while riding a unicycle. The social dynamics among your surviving siblings reach a critical breaking point as individual personalities emerge from the shared trauma of extended survival. Some become increasingly aggressive, using their size advantageous food to dom sources in prime territory. Others develop into scouts, specializing in early warning systems and route planning. A few become specialists in reading environmental cues, able to predict weather changes and seasonal shifts that affect everyone's survival chances. These role specializations increase group efficiency, but also create dependencies that become dangerous when key individuals are lost. Your appetite has grown beyond anything your previous existence could have prepared you for. The sheer volume of vegetation required to fuel your rapid development means you spend nearly every waking hour either eating or searching for food. This constant foraging exposes you to danger repeatedly throughout each day. There's no longer any possibility of finding a safe hiding spot and waiting out dangerous periods. Survival has become an active, exhausting process that requires constant movement and exposure. The forest's predator community has taken notice of your group's success and adapted their strategies accordingly. Pack hunters coordinate more sophisticated attacks designed specifically for creatures of your size and defensive capabilities. Ambush predators position themselves along your established travel routes, having learned your movement patterns through patient observation. Even solitary hunters show more persistence, willing to invest greater energy in pursuing prey that offers substantial nutritional payoff. Your developing color patterns become both blessing and curse in ways that would fascinate evolutionary biologists, if any existed, to observe them. The bright hues that will eventually serve as species identification and mating displays currently act like target markers for anything with functioning eyesight. But these same colors help your siblings locate you in dense vegetation and coordinate group movements. It's another evolutionary catch-22 where survival tools become survival hazards. Territory disputes with other herbivore species escalate as your group's growing size brings you into direct competition with established plant eaters. Adult hadrosaurs and ankylosaurs don't appreciate young upstarts competing for their carefully defended feeding grounds. These confrontations rarely turn violent, but the psychological pressure of constant territorial negotiations adds another layer of stress to an already overwhelming existence. You're simultaneously too big to ignore and too small to command respect. Your sensory abilities reach almost supernatural levels of development, but this enhanced awareness comes with significant costs. The constant input of threat-related information creates cognitive overload that affects decision-making speed and accuracy. You can detect the approach of danger from impressive distances, but processing and responding to multiple simultaneous threats becomes increasingly difficult. It's like trying to monitor 50 different radio channels while translating everything into multiple languages. Weather patterns continue to dominate your strategic thinking in ways that would impress professional meteorologists. You've learned to read atmospheric pressure changes that predict storms hours in advance. Cloud formations tell you about wind patterns that will affect scent distribution. Humidity levels indicate how sound will carry and whether your movements will be audible to distant predators. This environmental awareness is crucial for survival, but requires mental processing power that leaves little room for anything resembling peace or contentment. The psychological toll of extended hypervigilance begins manifesting in physical symptoms that compound your vulnerabilities. Chronic stress affects your immune system, making you more susceptible to parasites and diseases that thrive in the humid forest environment. Sleep deprivation impairs your reaction times and decision-making abilities. The constant flood of stress hormones interferes with optimal nutrition absorption, creating a feedback loop where survival behaviors actually impede the physical development necessary for long-term survival. Your relationship with pain evolves into something approaching professional tolerance. Minor injuries from thorns, rough terrain, and close encounters become routine occurrences that barely register consciously. You develop an internal triage system that prioritizes threats based on immediate survival impact rather than discomfort levels. This pain tolerance is essential for continued functioning, but it also masks potentially serious injuries that could compromise your ability to escape future dangers. Food quality assessment becomes a complex science involving nutritional content, digestive efficiency, and tactical considerations. Plants that provide quick energy for emergency escapes take priority over those offering better long-term nutrition. Vegetation that grows near escape routes becomes more valuable than superior options in exposed locations. Your feeding choices reflect a sophisticated understanding of risk-reward calculations that would challenge professional nutritionists working with complete information and unlimited time. The forest's seasonal cycles create cascading effects that alter every aspect of your survival strategy. Spring growth spurts in plant life create abundant food, but also attract migrating herbivores that increase competition. Summer heat affects predator activity patterns and changes the thermal properties of your defensive plates. Autumn preparation behaviors in other species create territorial conflicts as everyone competes for resources before winter. Each season requires completely different tactical approaches to the same fundamental challenge of staying alive. Your growing size finally reaches a point where some smaller predators begin showing reluctance to engage. But this milestone brings new categories of threats from creatures that specialize in hunting larger prey. The calculation of whether you're worth attacking shifts as your defensive capabilities improve. But the predators willing to take you on become correspondingly more dangerous. It's like graduating from amateur boxing to professional matches, where the opponents are more skilled, but the potential damage is exponentially greater. Communication systems within your group develop into sophisticated networks that would impress intelligence analysts. Subtle body language conveys detailed information about threat types, distances, and confidence levels. Positioning within the group indicates individual status and tactical roles. Even feeding behaviors communicate information about environmental conditions and resource quality. This nonverbal intelligence network multiplies your collective survival chances, but also creates vulnerabilities when predators learn to interpret your signals. Your defensive plates undergo rapid structural changes that create temporary weak points during growth phases. The transition from cartilage to bone happens unevenly, creating areas of mixed strength that predators learn to target with disturbing precision. These vulnerability windows require altered defensive strategies and increased reliance on group protection during the periods when your natural armor is compromised. It's like wearing a bulletproof vest that randomly develops holes during the times you need protection most. Water requirements continue escalating with your size, but your improved defensive capabilities allow access to previously dangerous water sources. The trade-off between safety and hydration shifts as you become less vulnerable to smaller threats while remaining attractive to larger predators that frequent major water sources. These drinking expeditions become complex military operations requiring reconnaissance, coordinated timing, and multiple escape route planning. Your tail weapon finally develops enough power and precision to inflict serious damage, but mastering its use requires practice that puts you at constant risk. Each training session against real threats could be your last mistake, but without developing combat skills, you remain vulnerable to anything willing to press an attack. This deadly education system teaches effective fighting techniques through trial by fire, where graduation means survival and failure means becoming a lesson for other young Stegosaurs. The psychological pressure of group leadership begins affecting individuals who show superior survival skills, creating internal conflicts between self-preservation and collective responsibility. Making decisions that affect the entire group's survival while managing your own barely controlled terror requires emotional maturity that your reptilian brain isn't equipped to handle gracefully. These leadership burdens add another layer of complexity to an already overwhelming existence. Your understanding of predator behavior reaches levels of sophistication that would impress professional animal behaviorists. You learn to distinguish between hunting behavior and territorial displays, between desperate hunger and opportunistic feeding, between individual stalkers and coordinated pack attacks. This knowledge helps you assess threats more accurately, but it also means you're constantly analyzing the motivations and capabilities of everything that might want to kill you. The forest continues its relentless examination, each day presenting new problems that require immediate solutions with life or death consequences. Your body grows stronger and more capable, but the challenges scale proportionally, maintaining the razor-thin margin between survival and extinction that has defined your entire existence. The struggle persists, unforgiving and absolute, shaping every aspect of your development through the brutal arithmetic of natural selection. Every sunrise brings fresh calculations of risk and opportunity. Every sunset marks another day survived against impossible odds. Your transformation from helpless hatchling to formidable herbivore continues its agonizing progression, each milestone earned through suffering that would break creatures not forged in the crucible of Jurassic survival. The forest watches your progress with indifferent patience, ready to claim you the moment your vigilance falters or your luck finally runs out. Your plates have finally reached a size that commands some respect, but respect in the Jurassic comes with a price tag written in blood and exhaustion. These magnificent shields along your spine now catch every ray of sunlight, creating a light show that announces your presence to anything with functioning eyes within a square mile. You've become a walking advertisement for fresh meat, and the advertisement budget is paid with your life expectancy. The weight distribution of your growing armor creates new biomechanical challenges that your spine wasn't designed to handle gracefully. Every step requires conscious adjustment to maintain balance, with several 100 pounds of defensive plating shifting above your center of gravity. Your neck muscles strain constantly to support a head that now seems ridiculously small compared to your armored torso. It's like trying to balance an umbrella on a pencil while running an obstacle course designed by sadistic engineers. Your social group has evolved into something resembling a military unit, complete with specialized roles and unspoken protocols that would impress professional tacticians. The largest individual serves as point guard, using superior size to intimidate potential threats and clear paths through territorial disputes with other herbivores. Scouts range ahead to identify dangers and locate food sources. Rear guards monitor your back trail for pursuing predators. This organization multiplies your survival chances exponentially. But it also creates single points of failure that keep everyone's stress levels permanently elevated. The forest's acoustic landscape becomes your primary intelligence network as visual detection ranges decrease due to your increased size. Sound travels differently through varying vegetation densities, and you've learned to read these audio signatures like topographical maps. The rustle of a hunting pack moving through dry leaves sounds distinctly different from the movementary predator stalking through of a sol-wet undergrowth. Wind direction affects how sound carries, creating acoustic shadows where dangers can approach undetected. Your digestive system struggles to keep pace with your body's explosive growth demands, creating nutritional deficiencies that manifest in unexpected ways. Calcium absorption becomes critical as your plates harden, but the plants that provide optimal mineral content often grow in exposed areas where feeding becomes a tactical nightmare. Protein requirements skyrocket during growth spurts, forcing you to seek out younger, more tender vegetation that contains higher concentrations of essential amino acids. Seasonal temperature fluctuations affect your plates in ways that create both opportunities and vulnerabilities. Cold snaps make the bone-like structures more brittle and prone to cracking under impact. Heat waves cause expansion that creates painful pressure points where plates interface with your spine. But these same thermal properties allow you to regulate body temperature more effectively than other creatures your size, providing energy efficiency advantages during extreme weather events. Your tail spikes have developed into genuinely formidable weapons, but their effectiveness depends on combat techniques that take months to master through painful trial and error. The physics of generating maximum impact force while maintaining defensive positioning requires understanding of leverage, timing, and anatomy that your brain processes through pure instinct and repetitive near-death experiences. Each successful defensive action builds muscle memory that might save your life in future encounters. Territory mapping reaches obsessive levels of detail as your range requirements expand with your size. You memorize not just the location of every major landmark, but the seasonal changes that affect their tactical value. Water sources that provide excellent cover during dry seasons become exposed killing fields when water levels drop. Dense thickets that offer sanctuary during summer become impassable barriers when winter storms bring down additional fallen timber. The predator community adapts to your growing capabilities with disturbing efficiency, developing new hunting strategies specifically designed to counter your defensive improvements. Pack hunters learn to coordinate attacks that target the gaps between your plates. Ambush predators position themselves to strike during the vulnerable moments when you're navigating difficult terrain that limits your mobility. Even scavengers become more aggressive, willing to test whether you're weak enough to be worth the risk of confrontation. Your sensory processing capabilities reach superhuman levels of sophistication, but the mental energy required to maintain this awareness creates cognitive fatigue that affects every other aspect of your existence. Distinguishing between the scent signatures of 30 different predator species while simultaneously monitoring acoustic threats and processing visual information about terrain conditions requires computational power that leaves little room for anything resembling rest or relaxation. Competition for prime-feeding territories intensifies as your group's success attracts attention from other herbivore populations looking to displace you from optimal locations. These confrontations rarely involve direct violence, but the psychological warfare of territorial disputes adds another layer of stress to an already overwhelming existence. Dominance displays and intimidation tactics require energy expenditure that could be better used for growth and defense against actual predators. Your plates begin showing the distinctive coloration patterns that will eventually serve as species identification markers. But these bright hues currently function more like target designators for anything hunting by sight. The evolutionary purpose of these colors remains mysterious, but their immediate effect is to make camouflage impossible and stealth irrelevant. You've become a creature that must rely on strength and intimidation rather than concealment and evasion. Sleep patterns fragment into micro-sessions scattered throughout circadian cycles, as your increased size makes finding concealed resting spots increasingly difficult. The days when you could simply disappear into dense vegetation are permanently behind you. Every resting period requires strategic positioning that balances concealment possibilities with escape route accessibility. True rest becomes a luxury you can't afford, replaced by a series of brief unconsciousness periods that barely qualify as recuperation. Food processing efficiency becomes critical as your digestive system struggles to extract maximum nutrition from increasingly large volumes of vegetation. The mechanical aspects of chewing and swallowing require more time and energy, creating extended periods of vulnerability during feeding. Your jaw muscles develop extraordinary strength, but the repetitive motion of processing tough plant matter creates fatigue that affects your ability to respond quickly to sudden threats. Weather prediction skills reach professional meteorologist levels of accuracy, as your survival depends on anticipating environmental changes that affect both your capabilities and predator behavior patterns. Barometric pressure changes that predict storms hours in advance allow you to seek appropriate shelter before conditions deteriorate. Humidity fluctuations indicate how effectively your scent will carry and whether acoustic detection ranges will be enhanced or diminished by atmospheric conditions. Your understanding of ecosystem relationships becomes encyclopedic as you learn to read the complex web of interactions that determine daily survival conditions. Plant diseases that affect primary food sources create ripple effects throughout the herbivore community, increasing competition and territorial conflicts. Predator population dynamics shift based on prey availability, creating periods of increased or decreased hunting pressure. Even geological events like landslides or fallen trees create new tactical landscapes that require immediate strategic adaptation. The psychological burden of maintaining peak alertness for extended periods begins manifesting in behavioral changes that affect group dynamics and individual decision-making processes. Hypervigilance becomes such a deeply ingrained response pattern that relaxation feels like a betrayal of survival instincts. The inability to achieve genuine rest creates a feedback loop of exhaustion that impairs the very awareness systems that keep you alive. Your defensive capabilities finally reach a threshold where some predators begin showing genuine reluctance to engage. But this milestone coincides with your entry into the hunting range of apex predators that specialize in taking down large, well-defended prey. The mathematics of risk assessment shift as smaller threats become manageable, while larger dangers become exponentially more lethal. It's like graduating from dodging thrown rocks to avoiding artillery strikes. Communication within your group evolves into a sophisticated system of signals that operates at frequencies and through methods that most predators haven't learned to interpret. Subtle changes in plate coloration convey emotional states and threat assessments. Body positioning indicates tactical intentions and readiness levels. Even feeding behaviors communicate information about resource quality and environmental conditions. This intelligence network provides crucial coordination advantages, but also creates vulnerabilities when predators crack your communication codes. Your tail weapon reaches full combat effectiveness, capable of delivering bone-crushing impacts that can disable or kill most creatures foolish enough to press and attack. But mastering the complex biomechanics of tail combat while maintaining balance and defensive positioning requires training that puts you at constant mortal risk. Each practice session against live threats could end in disaster. But without developing these skills, you remain vulnerable to anything willing to test your defenses. The forest continues its relentless curriculum in applied survival theory, each lesson more complex and dangerous than the last. Your body approaches something resembling its adult configuration, but the challenges scale proportionally, maintaining the knife-edge balance between capability and catastrophe that has defined your entire existence. The struggle persists with mathematical precision, every adaptation matched by corresponding increases in environmental pressure. Your transformation accelerates toward its inevitable conclusion. But the final phase of development brings the most dangerous period yet. You're large enough to attract the attention of the forest's apex predators while still lacking the full defensive capabilities that will eventually make you a formidable opponent. This vulnerable window between adolescence and adulthood represents the ultimate test of everything you've learned through months of barely surviving each day. The forest watches your progress with patient indifference, ready to claim you the moment your guard drops or your luck finally exhausts itself. Every sunrise brings calculations more complex than the last. Every sunset marks another day won through a combination of skill, instinct, and mathematical probability that grows thinner with each passing moment. Your struggle continues, unrelenting and absolute, forging you into something that might eventually command respect in this ancient world of giants and killers. Your journey toward true size accelerates with frightening intensity. But the closer you get to safety, the more dangerous everything becomes. It's the cruelest paradox of Stegosaurus existence. The final stretch toward invulnerability is when you're most likely to die. Your plates now rise like cathedral spires along your spine, magnificent and deadly, but they're still not quite thick enough to stop the teeth of something truly determined to kill you. The forest's apex predators have been watching your progress with the patience of professional executioners, waiting for exactly this moment when you're large enough to be worth their full attention, but not quite large enough to survive it. A full-grown Allosaurus doesn't waste energy on house cat-sized prey, but a Stegosaurus approaching adult dimensions represents a meal worth risking everything for. You've graduated into the major leagues of the food chain, where the players are bigger, faster, smarter, and infinitely more deadly. Your tail has become a genuine weapon of mass destruction capable of shattering bones and ending lives with surgical precision. But wielding it effectively against apex predators requires split-second timing and perfect positioning that takes years to master. You're like a newly minted soldier handed military-grade equipment and thrown immediately into combat against seasoned veterans. The hardware is impressive, but the software running it is still loading critical updates. The territorial dynamics shift dramatically as your group approaches adult size and begins competing directly with established herds for prime real estate. These aren't the minor squabbles of your youth over individual feeding spots. These are major conflicts involving dozens of animals fighting for control of entire valleys and river systems. The politics are Byzantine, the stakes are existential, and the learning curve is measured in casualties. Your sensory capabilities have evolved beyond anything you could have imagined during those first terrifying weeks of life. You can detect the emotional state of predators through chemical signatures so subtle they barely register as scent. The sound of a hunting pack coordinating an attack 2 miles away comes through clear as a dinner bell. Your ability to read weather patterns, terrain advantages, and ecosystem relationships approaches supernatural levels of sophistication, but this enhanced awareness comes with a price that's slowly driving you insane. The constant input of threat-related information creates a feedback loop of anxiety that never diminishes. Every shadow could hide death. Every sound might herald disaster. Every moment of inattention could be your last. The hypervigilance that kept you alive as a helpless hatchling has evolved into a psychological prison that makes genuine peace impossible to achieve. Your digestive system undergoes radical restructuring to accommodate the massive caloric requirements of your final growth phase. The volume of vegetation you must process daily would impress industrial farming equipment. Your jaw muscles develop to the point where you could probably bite through small trees. But all that chewing creates extended periods of vulnerability when your mouth is too busy to participate in threat assessment. The mathematics of group survival become increasingly complex as individual personalities assert themselves and create friction within your previously cohesive unit. Some siblings develop aggressive tendencies that make them valuable in confrontations, but dangerous during resource scarcity. Others become overly cautious, slowing group movement and creating tactical vulnerabilities. The balance between individual needs and collective survival requires constant negotiation and compromise. Your plates undergo their final hardening process, transitioning from flexible cartilage to bone-hard armor that can actually deflect serious attacks. But this transformation happens unevenly, creating temporary weak spots that experienced predators learn to target with disturbing accuracy. It's like upgrading your armor one piece at a time while enemies adapt their weapons to exploit whatever protection you're still missing. Seasonal migrations bring waves of new predators through your territory, each species presenting unique tactical challenges that require immediate adaptation of your survival strategies. Arctic hunters following prey south bring cold weather hunting techniques you've never encountered. Tropical specialists moving north during breeding season employ ambush methods that exploit your assumptions about local predator behavior. The curriculum never stops expanding, and the final exams are always potentially fatal. Your growing confidence occasionally leads to tactical errors that nearly prove catastrophic, reminding you that survival skills require constant calibration rather than simple accumulation. Successfully intimidating a medium-sized predator doesn't qualify you to challenge apex hunters, but your primitive brain doesn't always make these distinctions clearly. These near-death experiences from overconfidence provide harsh lessons in accurate threat assessment and realistic capability evaluation. The forest's acoustic environment becomes a three-dimensional intelligence network that you navigate with the skill of a professional surveillance operator. Different vegetation densities create sound corridors and dead zones that affect how audio information travels. Weather conditions modify acoustic signatures in predictable ways that allow you to compensate for environmental interference. The ability to triangulate threat locations through sound alone becomes a crucial survival skill when visual detection is compromised by terrain or vegetation. Your relationship with pain reaches professional levels of tolerance and analysis as injuries become routine occupational hazards rather than emergency situations. Minor wounds from thorns, impacts, and close encounters barely register consciously unless they affect mobility or defensive capabilities. You develop an internal triage system that prioritizes medical attention based on tactical implications rather than comfort levels. Pain becomes just another source of information in your survival database. Water strategy evolves into complex logistical operations that would challenge military planners working with complete intelligence and unlimited resources. Your increased size means longer approach times to drinking sites, creating extended periods of vulnerability that must be managed through reconnaissance, timing, and coordinated group movements. The simple act of staying hydrated becomes a tactical nightmare, requiring backup plans, escape routes, and contingency protocols. Your understanding of predator psychology reaches levels that would impress criminal profilers studying human behavior. You learn to distinguish between opportunistic hunting and desperate starvation, between territorial displays and actual attack preparation, between individual stalkers and coordinated pack operations. This knowledge helps you assess threats more accurately, but it also means you're constantly analyzing the motivations and capabilities of everything that might want to kill you. Competition within your group intensifies as individuals approach sexual maturity and begin displaying behaviors that will eventually determine breeding rights and social hierarchy. These aren't the simple dominance contests of childhood, but complex psychological and physical competitions that affect every aspect of group dynamics. The winner gets the best feeding spots and mating opportunities, while the losers face increased vulnerability to predation and resource scarcity. Your defensive coloration reaches full development, creating patterns that serve multiple purposes but also generate new vulnerabilities. The bright hues that help identify you to potential mates also function as threat displays to rivals and target markers for colorblind predators that hunt by contrast rather than specific colors. Managing these competing visual signals requires strategic thinking about when to display and when to attempt concealment. The forest's seasonal cycles create cascading effects that alter every aspect of your survival calculations in ways that would challenge professional ecologists working with complete data sets. Plant flowering cycles affect insect populations, which influence bird behavior, which impacts the hunting patterns of aerial predators. Rainfall patterns change soil composition, affecting root system development, altering the stability of your favorite hiding spots and escape routes. Your tail combat skills finally reach lethal effectiveness, but mastering advanced techniques requires practice against opponents that can actually kill you if you make mistakes. Each training session is a potential death sentence, but without developing these abilities, you remain vulnerable to apex predators that specialize in hunting large, well-armed herbivores. The education system is brutal, where graduation means survival and failure means becoming a cautionary tale for other young stegosaurs. Sleep becomes increasingly elusive as your size makes concealment nearly impossible, and your enhanced sensory capabilities detect threats at greater distances. The micro naps that sustained you through adolescence no longer provide adequate rest for a body approaching full adult proportions. Chronic sleep deprivation affects reaction times, decision-making abilities, and immune system function, creating vulnerabilities that compound exponentially over time. Your plates finally achieve their full structural integrity, transforming from defensive hopes into genuine armor that can deflect the attacks of most predators foolish enough to test them. But this milestone coincides with your entry into the hunting range of creatures that specialize in defeating heavily armored prey. The tactical landscape shifts as smaller threats become manageable, while larger dangers require completely different defensive strategies. The psychological toll of extended hypervigilance reaches critical levels as your nervous system struggles to maintain peak alertness without adequate recovery periods. The constant flood of stress hormones begins affecting your ability to process information accurately and respond appropriately to different categories of threats. Survival behaviors that once saved your life start becoming counterproductive as exhaustion impairs the very systems that keep you alive. Your understanding of ecosystem relationships becomes so sophisticated that you can predict environmental changes hours or days in advance by reading subtle indicators that most creatures ignore completely. Changes in insect behavior patterns indicate approaching weather fronts. Shifts in bird migration timing suggest resource availability fluctuations. Even geological events like landslides leave predictive signatures in animal behavior that allow you to anticipate and avoid dangerous situations. Territory disputes escalate as your group's success attracts challenges from established herds seeking to displace you from prime locations. These confrontations involve complex negotiations through intimidation displays, strategic positioning, and psychological warfare that would impress professional diplomats. The ability to project strength without actually engaging in combat becomes crucial, as physical conflicts could result in injuries that compromise everyone's survival chances. Your digestive efficiency reaches optimal levels as your gut bacteria adapt to process the massive volumes of vegetation required to fuel your final growth phase. But this optimization comes with trade-offs that create new vulnerabilities. The extended processing time required for tough plant matter means longer feeding sessions that expose you to predation risks. The specialized bacterial colonies become sensitive to stress and dietary changes that can disrupt digestion maintaining the razor-thin critical moments. The forest continues that has defined your entire existence, more complex and dangerous than the last. Your body margin between triumph and catastrophe approaches its final adult configuration, but the challenges scale proportionally its relentless examination system. Each test keeping the survival equation. Every adaptation is matched by corresponding increases in environmental pressure balanced at the edge of impossibility. Your transformation in the ultimate trial by fire. You're large enough to commandeer's completion, but the final phase represents respect from most creatures, yet still vulnerable to the apex but worthwhile prey. This transitional period between predators that view adult stegosaurs as challenging. Rise, the forest watches your progress with ancient patience, ready to claim you, the momentation of everything you've learned through months of barely surviving each day. Adolescence and full maturity represents the Kalman physics. Every sunset marks another day when your vigilance falters or your calculations prove insufficient. Every sunrise brings problems more complex than theoretical. Through a combination of skill, instinct, and probability mathematics that grows more precarious with each passing hour. Your struggle continues toward its inevitable conclusion, forging you into something that might eventually earn true safety in this primordial world of giants and nightmares. The final weeks before full maturity arrive like a fever dream of violence and transformation. Your body has become a living fortress, but fortresses can become prisons when you're still learning how to operate the defenses. Those magnificent plates along your spine now rise like ancient shields forged by geological time itself, each one a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering that took millions of years to perfect and months of agony to grow. But here's the thing about becoming a walking tank in a world designed to kill you. The bigger you get, the more attention you attract from creatures that specialize in destroying exactly what you're becoming. It's like painting a target on your back and then wondering why everyone starts shooting at you. The forest's apex predators have been circling like vultures, waiting for this exact moment when you're impressive enough to be worth their time, but not quite deadly enough to guarantee their failure. Your tale has evolved into something that would make medieval weapons designers weep with envy. 4 massive spikes, each one capable of punching through bone like a hot knife through butter, attached to a muscular whip that can generate impact forces measured in tons per square inch. You've become a living siege engine, a biological battering ram with attitude and serious anger management issues. The problem is, knowing you have the weapon and knowing how to use it effectively are 2 completely different skill sets. And that, my friends, is the brutal mathematics of Stegosaurus survival. From that first terrifying moment when you crack open your shell to the day you finally become too dangerous for most predators to consider worth the risk. Every single breath is earned through a combination of luck, instinct, and sheer bloody-minded determination. The forest doesn't care about your struggles, your growth, or your dreams of reaching adulthood. It operates on one simple principle: adapt fast or become fertilizer. Those iconic plates and spikes that make stegosaurs instantly recognizable. They're not just cool dinosaur features, they're graduation certificates written in bone and paid for in terror. So the next time you see a Stegosaurus in a movie looking all majestic and peaceful,